The air in the Providence Municipal Court is usually thick with a specific kind of anxiety. It is the anxiety of the working class. People worrying about whether a $50 parking ticket means skipping groceries for the week, or if a speeding fine will spike their insurance rates beyond affordability. It is a room filled with honest mistakes, financial desperation, and the occasional plea for mercy. But on this particular Tuesday, the atmosphere shifted the moment the heavy oak doors swung open. The anxiety didn't disappear. It was replaced by a sudden, stifling drop in temperature. All heads turned. The shuffling of papers stopped. Even the hum of the gallery's whispered conversations died instantly. Walking down the center aisle was a young man who clearly believed he was walking onto a stage, built solely for him. Let's call him Alistair. He was in his early 20s, dressed in a suit that cost more than most of the cars parked outside. His hair was perfectly coiffed, his chin held high, not in dignity, but in disdain. He didn't look at the bailiff. He didn't look at the clerk. He looked at his watch, tapping the face of it with an irritated finger, as if the mere existence of this court was an inconvenience to his schedule. He walked past a mother holding a crying infant. He stepped around an elderly man leaning on a cane. He moved with the frictionless confidence of someone who has never been told no in his entire life. At the bench sat Chief Judge Frank Caprio. If you know the judge, you know his demeanor. He is the grandfather of the courtroom. He leads with empathy. He looks for the story behind the ticket. He wants to know if you're a student, if you're working 2 jobs, if you're trying your best in a world that often makes it hard to be good. He usually greets defendants with a smile, a warm question about their family, or a joke about the local sports teams. But today, Frank Caprio wasn't smiling. He was watching. He adjusted his glasses, his eyes narrowing slightly behind the lenses. He watched Alistair take his place at the podium, not waiting to be called. The young man threw a leather portfolio onto the stand with a heavy thud. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Name," the clerk said, her voice tight. "You have it on the file," Alistair replied, not even looking at her. He was looking up at the judge, a smirk playing on his lips. "Let's get this over with. I have a lunch reservation at 1. The room gasped. A collective intake of breath. You simply do not talk to the court like that. You do not treat the halls of justice like a drive-through window. Judge Caprio leaned forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bang his gavel. He just let the silence stretch out, long and uncomfortable. He let the young man's arrogance hang in the air, allowing it to spoil like milk in the sun. "Good morning," Caprio said finally. His voice was calm, but it had a granite undercurrent. "In this courtroom, we start with respect, for the process, for the people working here, and for the people waiting behind you." Alistair chuckled. It was a dry, hollow sound. "Respect," he repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. "Judge, look at the name on the docket. Go ahead. Read it out loud." The judge looked down at the file. He paused. He saw the last name. It was a name plastered on billboards across the city, a name associated with influence, with state politics, with power. It was the name of a man who helped write the laws that this court was sworn to uphold. "I see the name," Caprio said. "It is a name I recognize. Your father serves the public." "My father runs this district," Alistair corrected, leaning his elbows on the podium. "Which is why—" He gestured vaguely at the room, at the people, at the flag. "Is a waste of my time. I'm sure a phone call was made. I'm sure we can just dismiss this and move on." The charges were not minor. 3 counts of speeding in a school zone, 1 count of reckless driving, 1 count of failure to yield to a pedestrian. These weren't administrative errors. These were acts of callous disregard for human life. "These are serious charges," Caprio said, tapping the paper. 35 miles per hour in a school zone, while children were present. Do you understand the danger? Alistair rolled his eyes. The road was wide. My car handles well. I was in control. Besides, he waved a hand dismissively. I can do whatever I want. That's how this works. Rules are for the people who can't afford to break them. There it was. the sentence that froze the room. I can do whatever I want. It wasn't just a statement of arrogance. It was a challenge. It was a direct assault on the very concept of justice. In that moment, the courtroom ceased to be a place about traffic laws. It became a battleground between two opposing philosophies, one that believes money and lineage grant immunity, and one that believes the law is the great equalizer. The camera operator in the corner zoomed in. The gallery was dead silent. The mother with the baby stopped rocking. The old man with the cane leaned forward. Everyone was waiting. They were waiting to see if it was true. They were waiting to see if the system they feared, the system they respected, would crumble before the son of a politician. If Judge Caprio let this go, if he bowed to the pressure of the name, hope would die in that room. Judge Caprio took off his glasses. He placed them slowly on the desk. He folded his hands. "You believe," Caprio began, his voice dropping an octave, becoming incredibly intimate, "that because of who your father is, the rules do not apply to you." "I know they don't," Alistair said. "Let's be real, Judge. You're not going to fine me. You're not going to suspend my license. You know who calls the shots." Caprio looked at the young man. He didn't look angry. He looked sad. He looked like a teacher watching a student fail a test they didn't even try to study for. "Young man," Caprio said, "you are operating under a profound misconception. You seem to think that your father's position elevates you above the law. But in this country, in this courtroom, a public servant's family is not held to a lower standard. They are held to a higher one." Alistair blinked. This wasn't the script he expected. He expected bluster. He expected negotiation. He didn't expect a philosophy lesson. "My father is a busy man," Alistair snapped, his composure cracking slightly. "He doesn't have time for this." "Your father," Caprio interrupted, his voice sharpening like a blade, "was elected by the very people sitting behind you. He was elected to serve them, to protect them. And when his son drives through a school zone at 35 miles per hour, threatening the lives of their children, you are not just breaking a traffic law. You are betraying the trust placed in your family." The judge picked up the file again. "You said, 'I can do whatever I want.' Let me tell you what that phrase actually means. It is the anthem of tyrants. It is the slogan of bullies. And it has no place in a democracy." Caprio turned his gaze to the gallery. He looked at the faces of the people there. The mechanics, the nurses, the teachers, the unemployed. "Does anyone here believe," Caprio asked the room, "that this young man should be allowed to endanger your children because of his last name?" "No," a voice cried out from the back. Then another. "No!" Alistair whipped around, glaring at the audience. "Quiet," he shouted. "Do you know who I am?" "We know who you are." Caprio's voice boomed, cutting through the noise. He was no longer the soft-spoken grandfather. He was the voice of the court. "You are a citizen of Rhode Island. You are a licensed driver. And right now you are a defendant in my courtroom. And in this courtroom there are no princes. There are only people." The young man's face turned red. The shield of his privilege was cracking. He wasn't used to this. He was used to doors opening. He was used to hushed apologies. He wasn't used to accountability. "This is ridiculous," Alistair stammered. "I'm leaving. Send the bill to my father's office." He turned to walk away. "Officer!" Caprio barked. The bailiff, a large man who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward, blocking the aisle. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't need to. His presence was a wall of blue uniform and authority. Alistair stopped. He looked at the bailiff, then back at the judge. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. "You can't stop me," Alistair said, but his voice wavered. "Sit down," Caprio ordered. It wasn't a request. Alistair hesitated. He looked around for an ally, for someone to recognize his status. But all he saw were eyes that were tired of being pushed around, eyes that were finally seeing the scales of justice balance out. Slowly, reluctantly, the politician's son sank into the defendant's chair. He wasn't standing tall anymore. He was slumped. "Now," Caprio said, putting his glasses back on. "We are going to have a conversation, not about your father, but about you. And about the choices you made that day." The judge opened the evidence folder. He pulled out a photograph. "This," Caprio said, holding up a grainy image from a traffic camera, "is your vehicle. And this," he pointed to a blur in the corner of the frame, "is a crossing guard. She is 72 years old. Her name is Mrs. Higgins. She was helping a 6-year-old girl cross the street when you sped by." The courtroom went deadly silent. "You missed them by 3 feet, Caprio whispered. 3 feet. He let the image hang there. "You say you can do whatever you want. Did you want to kill Mrs. Higgins? Did you want to end a child's life?" "No," Alistair muttered, looking at the floor. "I didn't see them." "You didn't see them because you weren't looking," Caprio said. "You were looking at your watch. You were thinking about your lunch reservation. You were thinking about how important you are. This is the crux of the issue. It is the blindness of privilege. It is the belief that the world is a backdrop for your own movie, and everyone else is just an extra. Restorative justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making the offender see the extras. It's about turning them into real people in the eyes of the accused. "I want you to look at the screen," Caprio said, gesturing to the monitor on the wall where evidence was displayed. "I want you to watch the video." Alistair shook his head. "I don't need to see it." "You do," Caprio insisted. "Play the tape." The video was short. It showed the sleek luxury car blurring past a stopped school bus. It showed the crossing guard throwing her arms out to shield the child. It showed the wind from the car whipping the guard's jacket. It was terrifyingly close. The room watched in horror. Even Alistair, despite his best efforts to remain aloof, flinched when the car on the screen flew past. When the video ended, the screen went black. "That represents a choice," Caprio said. "That represents a character flaw. You see, a car is a weapon. In the hands of a responsible person, it is a tool. In the hands of an arrogant person, it is a missile." The judge leaned back. "I have heard your defense, which was, essentially, I am special. Now, I am going to make a ruling. But before I do, I want to ask you one question, and I want an honest answer. If you were that crossing guard, if that was your grandmother, how would you feel about the driver who said, 'I can do whatever I want'?" Alistair remained silent for a long time. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to get louder. The silence was heavy, pressurized. The audience was leaning forward, desperate for the breakthrough, desperate for the crack in the armor. "I would be angry," Alistair finally whispered. "Speak up," Caprio said. "I would be angry," Alistair said, louder this time. He looked up. The smirk was gone. In its place was something else. Not quite remorse yet, but realization. Realization that he was small, that the world was big, and that steel and glass don't care about your last name when they collide with flesh and bone. "You would be angry," Caprio repeated. He nodded slowly. "That is a human reaction. It is a correct reaction, because anger, in that context, is a signal that something unjust has occurred." The judge leaned forward, clasping his hands together. The tension in the room had shifted. It was no longer the sharp electric tension of a fight. It was the heavy, solemn tension of a confessional. "So, tell me, Alistair, if you would be angry at the man who almost killed your grandmother, why should the people of Providence not be angry at you?" Alistair opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The logic was a trap, and he had walked right into it. The golden boy, the politician's son, the untouchable prince of the city, was suddenly just a young man in a cheap plastic chair, realizing he was the villain of his own story. "I made a mistake," Alistair said. His voice was quiet now. The arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind a stark, naked vulnerability. "No," Caprio corrected him gently. "You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is when you drive 40 in a 35 because you missed a sign. A mistake is when you park too close to a hydrant because you were rushing to the hospital. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a mindset." The judge picked up the gavel, not to use it, but to hold it. He turned it over in his hands, examining the wood. You came in here telling me you could do whatever you want. That is a very dangerous philosophy, because the moment you believe you are above the rules, you separate yourself from humanity. You stop seeing people as people. You start seeing them as obstacles. Mrs. Higgins wasn't a person to you. She was a speed bump. Alistair looked down at his hands. He was twisting a gold ring on his finger, a nervous tick that betrayed his anxiety. I want to apologize, Alistair said. I can write a letter. I can pay the fine right now, whatever the maximum is. 500? 1,000? I have my checkbook. He reached into his jacket pocket, eager to resolve this the only way he knew how. With money. He pulled out a sleek, leather-bound checkbook and a fountain pen. I'll write it for 2,000, Alistair said, his voice gaining a little speed. For the court costs, for the trouble. Let's settle this. The sound of the pen uncapping was loud in the silent room. Put the pen away, Caprio said. Alistair froze. Excuse me? I said, put the pen away. The judge's face was unreadable. You are trying to buy your way out of a feeling, son. You are feeling guilt. You are feeling shame. And those are uncomfortable feelings. So you want to pay me to make them go away. You want a transaction. But justice is not a transaction. It is a transformation. Caprio looked out at the gallery again. If I take your money, what have I taught you? I have taught you that the law has a price tag. I have taught you that if you are rich enough, you can endanger lives and simply pay a fee to clear your conscience. That is not a lesson I am willing to teach. The judge sat back. The air in the room felt thin. Everyone knew the ruling was coming. Here is the reality, Caprio said. Your father serves the public. He deals in laws. He deals in policy. But he cannot give you character. You have to build that yourself. And today, the foundation of that character is cracked. So, Caprio continued, looking at the papers, I am going to impose a sentence, and it is not going to be one you can write a check for. Alistair stiffened. You can't suspend my license. I have meetings. I have places to be. You had places to be, Caprio corrected. But the privilege of driving is reserved for those who respect the road. You have demonstrated that you do not. The judge began to write on the docket. The scratching of his pen was the only sound in the world. On the charge of speeding in a school zone, guilty. On the charge of reckless driving, guilty. On the charge of failure to yield, guilty. He looked up. Fines totaling $1,500. That is the maximum allowed by law. Alistair reached for his checkbook again, relieved. Done. I can pay that now. I'm not finished, Caprio said. The relief vanished from Alistair's face. In addition to the fines, Caprio said, his voice ringing with authority, your license to operate a motor vehicle in the state of Rhode Island is hereby suspended for a period of 6 months. 6 months? Alistair stood up, outraged. That's impossible. How am I supposed to get around? Do you expect me to take the bus? The bus is a perfectly fine mode of transportation, Caprio said calmly. Many of the people in this room take it every day. Perhaps riding with them will help you remember that you are part of a community, not the ruler of it. My father will hear about this, Alistair threatened, his old instincts flaring up one last time. I hope he does, Caprio smiled. I think he might actually thank me, because right now, you are a liability to him. I am trying to turn you into an asset. Sit down, Caprio said again. There is one more part to your sentence. Alistair sat, defeated. He looked like a balloon that had lost all its air. The suspension was bad. But the look on Caprio's face suggested something else was coming. Something personal. You said you didn't see the crossing guard, Caprio said. You didn't see the children. You were too busy. So, we are going to fix your vision. I am ordering you to complete 50 hours of community service, but not just anywhere. I am assigning you to the Crossing Guard Association of Providence. A murmur went through the crowd. A few people smiled. You are not going to direct traffic, Caprio clarified. You are not qualified for that. You are going to assist them. You are going to wear the neon vest. You are going to stand on the corner in the rain and the cold. You are going to hold the stop sign. And you are going to look into the faces of the children you almost hit." Alistair looked horrified. "You want me to stand on a street corner in a neon vest? People will see me." "That is exactly the point," Caprio said. "I want you to see them. And I want you to feel what it is like to stand there, vulnerable, unprotected, while a 2-ton car comes speeding toward you at 35 miles per hour because the driver is late for lunch." The judge leaned in close to the microphone. "You will learn what fear feels like from the other side of the windshield. And maybe, when you get your license back in 6 months, you will drive differently, not because you are afraid of a ticket, but because you understand the value of the lives around you." Alistair sat there for a long moment. He looked at the judge. He looked at the gallery. The anger was gone. The embarrassment was gone. In their place was something heavier. Humility. It is a heavy coat to wear, humility. It scratches, it weighs you down, but it keeps you warm in a way that arrogance never can. "Do you understand the sentence?" Caprio asked. Alistair nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you accept the sentence?" Alistair took a breath. He looked at his checkbook, lying useless on the table. He picked it up and put it back in his pocket. "I accept it," he said. And for the first time since he walked in, his voice sounded real. It sounded like a man, not a caricature. "Good," Caprio said. The tension broke. The granite face softened back into the grandfather. "Alistair, look at me." The young man looked up. "You have a bright future," Caprio said kindly. "You are smart. You are articulate. You have resources most people dream of. Don't waste them being a bully. Use them to be a leader. A real leader serves. A real leader protects. You can be that man, but you have to choose it." "I will," Alistair said. "Thank you, Judge." "Good luck to you," Caprio said. "Case closed." The gavel banged. Crack. As Alistair turned to leave, the room didn't gasp. They didn't whisper. As he walked down the aisle, slower this time, respectful of the space, a few people nodded to him. He wasn't the villain anymore. He was just another person who had learned a hard lesson in room 205. He walked past the bailiff. He walked past the mother with the baby. He stopped at the door, looking back at the bench one last time. Judge Caprio was already calling the next case, already smiling at a terrified college student holding a parking ticket. Alistair pushed the doors open and walked out into the bright Providence sunlight. He had walked in a prince, he walked out a citizen, and for the first time in his life, he was heading towards a bus stop. That is the power of this courtroom. It isn't about the fines. It isn't about the laws. It's about the moment the mirror is held up, and we are forced to look at who we really are. Sometimes we don't like what we see. But if we are lucky, we have a judge like Frank Caprio to help us wipe the glass clean and start over. Respect is not inherited. It is earned. And today, in a small courtroom in Rhode Island, a young man began the long, hard work of earning it. If you believe that justice should educate rather than just punish, and if you believe that no one is above the law, hit that subscribe button. Join us next time for another story from the bench. Until then, drive safe and take care of each other.